Okay, so having performed some of these RESTful, or having provided ourselves the RESTful framework from last day, if you've been really paying attention, I don't blame you if you haven't because it's not immediately obvious. Um, we've done a few things. We've protected our resources so that only an authenticated user can access certain routes. But really, when you get down to it, we only actually did one of those things. We only prevented an unauthenticated user from creating a new record. At this point, anybody can come in across the internet and start changing stuff around. So that's the problem we're going to address today with permissions. So yeah, first things first, we're going to force the user to be logged in. So this is a little bit more review because we did this 2 classes ago. Created a user, created that authentication, encrypted the password, all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to provide that conditional access. So as I said, we got a problem. Anyone can come edit this stuff. Everyone can come along and delete it. We only want this to be the case if someone is actually currently authenticated. This is a user that we already know. We're going to talk a little bit because I say a little bit because we've been talking about responsiveness throughout this course. Remember, mobile first. The common practice, you can call it a trend, is to create your web application so that they look good on a cell phone first. And we can define our CSS and we can tweak it so that no matter what the screen size is, it's going to look good. That's what it all comes down to, is really just making it look good. One thing that we've been doing, this is traditionally something we've saved till today, but pushing to GitHub. So we're just going to gloss over all this stuff because you guys already know it. And most of you have been very good about doing this. Kudos to you. Very good. So yeah, first things first, got to make sure that we're logged in. So we've already addressed this problem, but we still have these issues. We still have these open points of access on our computer. To do this, we can use what's called a filter. So we've applied this constraint to creating new records. But we want to keep things dry, right? We don't want to repeat the same code over and over again, checking to make sure that the user is actually logged in. So to do this, we can use what's called a filter. In this case, if you look at the route being defined here, this one in particular just blocks, or at least executes this code. I shouldn't say block. It doesn't necessarily block it, but it captures any requests to this route and executes this code first. So in this case, we're saying, unless this user is logged in being a helper method that we've already defined, I want you to redirect to the login screen to give the user that opportunity to authenticate. And this will be applied before any call to post/new. Of course, this is a very narrow focus, a very narrow filter. We're not doing much more than what we've accomplished. We can broaden this a little bit and just apply it to every single route. We can leave this route out entirely and just say, I want authentication on every single one. Or I want authentication only on these routes, or whichever ones that match. So that really dries out our code. So when we're thinking about these things, and we're thinking about these constraints and making sure that our data retains its integrity, so that nobody can come along, we got to start thinking about error codes or response codes, not necessarily errors all the time. I'm sure you've all seen the 404 not found error. There's I think there's about 50 of these different things. They start at 100, they go up to 500, 500 exclusive. And for each one of these errors, there's a problem associated with it. So 404, whatever you ask for, it doesn't exist. We don't know what you're talking about. 401, that means that you're not authorized to access this resource. So it's up to us as developers to notify the client, be it a web browser, be it some sort of thing that's consuming API data, whatever it is. This code tells a story about what went wrong. When we get up to the 500 levels, we're talking about server errors. So actually, this just occurred to me. We can take a look at all these different error codes. HTTP status dog. So there we go. Clearly, I've looked at this before. So there's a picture of a dog associated with all these different codes. So yeah, the 100 one is kind of an internal thing. You don't usually return this thing manually. It's just something the server does. When we get to the 200 levels, 200 of course is everything's okay. Here's the data that you want. Here's the code that says that the request was successful. All the ones in the 200 denote some kind of success. So this one was created. If you created a new record, perhaps request was accepted. Non-authoritative information. I'm not sure what that one means, but they go all the way up to 500. So I'm going to shrink this down so we can see a few more of them. There we go. 300 is also, it doesn't mean failure, but it means something else has happened. So most commonly, you're going to see 300 codes returned when you perform a redirect. That's probably the most common time you see this. And we've been performing redirects all over the place. So you may not even be aware of it. You don't really have to. This is just kind of something that's there. So a good example of that would be if you're going to http//example.com. A very common thing is to redirect you to a secure site, HTTPS. You see that all over the place. Different ones here. Some of these are kind of funny. There's 401 unauthorized, so something went wrong, and this is suggesting to you when you get to the 400 that you did something wrong. It's not a server problem. You made some sort of inappropriate or mangled request or something. So very common one, you're not logged in. I don't actually know that you see this that often. I don't do a lot of e-commerce, or at least not all the nitty-gritty stuff, but I'm sure they do use it. Forbidden, you do not have whatever permissions you have. What is the difference here? What is the difference between unauthorized and forbidden? I'm not actually sure. What's that? Pebcac?
Yeah, have you heard that one before?
No.
Problem exists between chair and
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, a bunch of different error codes. Method not allowed, not acceptable. 410, I like this one here. 410 gone. That dog's running away. I used to have a dog like that. She could jump over a fence easily that high. So one of these is really funny. Oh yeah, not that one. Enhance your comm. I like this one. I think this "I am a teapot" was an April Fool's joke at some point. I think Twitter uses it for some reason. I can't remember offhand, but it pops up. So obviously, when you're talking about this stuff and you're talking about computer science in general, everything's a joke, right? It's someone just tries to think of something funny to make their friends laugh. Yeah. So enhance your comm. This is definitely a Twitter one. You've been posting too much stuff. 420. Unprocessable entity. That's a good one. The one I'm looking for is partial content. I think that one's just so sad and rude and hilarious at the same time. So now we're getting to 500s. These aren't the problem existing between the user or the chair and the computer. This is something went wrong on the server side. So this is a problem with your application. Usually you'll see internal server error a lot if you start working with databases and your database crashes. Bad gateway, that's a good one. Yeah, insufficient storage. Oh, what happened to partial content? Let's see if I can find it. No, it's in there somewhere. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Partial content. That's not funny, is it? I don't know. It made me laugh. So, oh well. Okay, so let's get back to the slides here. All sorts of different error codes, and in most cases, the server kind of handles this stuff. Not every case, though. Sometimes it's appropriate for the developer, you, to set these codes manually. And we're going to do that with inside one of these before filters. And so in this case, we're saying, okay, stop everything. This is a 401 error. You're not authorized. We call this halt method, and we render this corresponding view. So we can create views special for each one of these different kinds of requests. And you see this especially in a lot of big commercial sites, well, even small ones. It's if you miss something, or if you're on Twitter. I don't actually use Twitter, but that enhancer com or the fail whale, that's a custom thing. So there's a code associated with it, and the Twitter developers took the time to create a custom view. So yeah, a few words about responsive design, and we'll do some light demo on this. But for now, make it for your phone first. And I showed you how to do this in the inspector and all this kind of stuff. This isn't always the way it's going to be, especially with these like new VR goggles. There's going to come a day when the tools we use and these technologies are going to become even more integrated, and they're already pretty integrated because we're all compulsively checking our phones every 2 seconds. My money is on the, what do they call it? Augmented reality. So if you've seen these Google glasses and they got a little window at the top, you're going to be walking around, you're going to be seeing Pokemon happen before your eyes in the glasses that you see. So it's not going to be mobile first anymore. I think it's going to be augmented reality first. That's where I'd place my bets anyway. Well, here you see some a good illustration of what I'm talking about. So if we start with the mobile, we kind of got that essential information, like the most critical. The best example, because I'm on Facebook pretty regularly. There's a big difference between when I log on with my phone and I log in with my desktop. The desktop naturally has a lot more screen space, so why not add a little bit more functionality, or a lot more functionality in the case of Facebook. So, here's some good examples. Whoops, go back. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's take a look at what the Sasquatch Festival looks like. One of the quirky facts I haven't used, is as part of this Lighthouse Labs stuff. We always share these quirky facts. I know 3 people who have had encounters with Sasquatch. I know this has nothing to do with the Sasquatch, but actually, now that I think about it, I'd say 4.
You mean like in the forest, the Sasquatch?
Yeah.
That? Yeah.
And the hilarious thing about it is most of the sightings are in northern Manitoba and northern Ontario. But then I was driving a guy out to Morley. That's a story in itself. I'll tell you about it at the pub. And he was telling me about where they spot the Sasquatch on the reservation. And there's like this patch of wood, and take it with a grain of salt, of course, but that's what you see. So this is an example of good design. And of course, this is the big screen view, or at least the medium screen view on my laptop and on the projector. Right, it looks great. This is an example of the good.
Very thoughtful.
Yeah. So take a look at the bad. I think like this one we've been using for a few cycles, a few cohorts, part-time cohorts. So this one actually gets better and better and better. That's the funny thing about it. But let's take a look. We'll make it big first. It's pretty ugly. Or this, I guess, this is what they call the bad. I don't know. This is more ugly than anything, really. But if I shrink it down, I think this is kind of an unfair thing. This, hang on. Sometimes you need to refresh these things. It's still ugly, right? But it's responsive. It fits on the cell phone.
It doesn't look any worse than their
Yeah. Right, exactly. That's why I don't think it's that bad. It's getting better because like when we first started it basically just this is the mobile view. It basically just took this big screen and it tried to shrink it down on your cell phone. And of course, I'm sure you've all been to sites like that. It's kind of a nightmare. And it certainly doesn't make you want to look at it on your phone. What was the last one? The ugly. I think this one's more bad. And it's so funny that, this website still exists. I'm not sure I ever saw a space one, right?
They didn't have cell phones when they made this one.
No, and this one is, this is probably cutting edge for, like, when did Space Jam come out? This was when Michael Jordan was still hot, right? He, this would have been cutting edge at the time, right? This is basic HTML, but maybe a little bit of CSS. I'm not really sure. But when you shrink it down, it shrinks according to the size of the screen, and it doesn't change, right? So we use CSS to make this look a little bit nicer and take away the content that's not necessary, and display content more appropriate to the device. So, yeah, this I don't know if I've ever seen this movie. I don't think I have. I only saw Top Gun a few years ago too. It's like, and that's usually the one that said, "You've never seen Top Gun?"
No Space Jam news at the moment.
Space Jam. Oh yeah, Space Jam news. I better see if I can sign up for their email. Jeez. All right. So moving on. Space Jam news. Space Jam 2 coming soon. Okay, so to do this, we use what are called media queries, and there's something that we're not mentioning here, and of course, I'll be careful to mention it during the demonstration. But there's a lot of communication between once the request is made and it receives, the content, it receives the CSS styles. The CSS styles can be changed depending on the size of the device. So we use these new things. Well, at least a little bit new. I've actually done this for you guys in very simple terms. But we just ask, okay, so what am I looking at here? If it's at least 600 pixels wide, so that's the minimum width, change the width of the latest post. So make it 33% of the screen. Otherwise, if it's anything less, so this is the mobile first idea, give it a little bit more space, right? Instead of occupying 33% of the width of the screen, we need a little bit more space to display it on the cell phone. Yeah, so really the only thing in this case, if you did land here with a large tablet or maybe a large screen phone, the only thing that would be overwritten would be this width 20 or width 50 and replaced with this width 33. The padding remains the same. Okay, mobile first. Some good positive benefits. I don't really see any negative benefits. Really, from a design perspective, not a designer, but it does really force you to make certain decisions about what is absolutely vital. Of course, a lot of the stuff on the Facebook desktop version is not vital to you just walking down the street and checking your posts or whatever. So yeah, kind of forces you to simplify your designs. Now it says mobile devices have less power. That is true. Don't get me wrong, but these are still very powerful devices. The cell phones we have dwarf anything probably even that was on the market like even 5 years ago, right? If you got a new cell phone, this is a very powerful computational device. So I'm not sure that this is entirely legitimate. It's not untrue. It's just, are we really that concerned? Okay, so yeah, you guys know all this. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Like I'm just going to kind of gloss over this stuff. But if you want to see what the state of your repository on your local system, and when I say local, I mean on Cloud9 or if you're working on your desktop or whatever it may be, that will tell you what hasn't been committed, what is and isn't tracked, and what you need to do to ensure that your data is under version control. Once we find that, we can do this all in one line. We say git commit -am, nothing new, and give ourselves a little friendly message. And I think I mentioned this, but usually I think the right expression or right way to describe this, we describe the change in the active sense. So we're thinking about our audience. We tell the audience what will happen if you pull these changes. If you take what you've already have, there's some changes in your origin repository. I bring them all in. So usually I don't say I added some new stuff in the past tense. I say get this new stuff. That's what's going to happen if you pull these changes. Not sure why. It's just kind of what we do. Yeah. So git pull. There's nothing stopping you from cloning this repository to Cloud9 or cloning it to your local machine, whatever it is. There are going to be changes. Say you are working on your laptop. here, and then you go home and you start doing work on your desktop, you're going to need to make these things the same. Whatever you push there, whatever's currently in the repository, we retrieve it by calling git pull. On the flip side, we want to send those changes away. We've done some work. We want to get it saved off site. We push it to wherever its destination is. All right, likes and comments. That's what you guys are going to be doing today. Let's do a little bit of demo before that. I've got my prep. I kind of got to get my bearings here. Okay, so we're talking about 3 new concepts. We're talking about status codes. We're talking about filters. And we're using filters as a way to block off sensitive points in our API. Things that we don't want just anybody coming along and messing with. So, let me bring up my notes here. Hang on. I like to define before filters, and these all take place in the actions.rb in this configuration at least. I like to put the filters right up the top, but I don't think it actually matters. The order in which you define these things matters, because the first match it finds is going to be the one that it uses. But where you place these definitions in the file, actually, no, I don't think it makes any difference. I shouldn't be too loose on that one, because I always put them at the top, so it's never been a problem. So first thing, let's define a method, a filter that kind of replicates some of the stuff we've already done. So I'm going to say any access to the video/new route, I want to do something. So this is what it currently does. I can't go to new/new unless I'm logged in. This is what happens. So I'm just kind of replicating something, just cleaning up my code a little bit. Whoops, I meant video/new. Video/new, there we go. So what this currently does, as defined 2 classes ago, it just redirects you, which is what you would expect, right? If you just open this up, you weren't logged in or your session expired, whatever might have happened, you go back, you want to be presented this opportunity to authenticate. So I'm just replicating some existing functionality. I have this existing get/new. This probably really belongs up here. So I just copied and pasted 1 line of code. And I just thought of a way to improve this a little bit. But now when I try it, instead of having this executed here, it's going to be executed in a step previous. So not much of a big difference. Let's just make sure it works. Say, whoopsies. Sinatra doesn't know that, did he? Come on, go back. So I'll do the video/new. And if I did it right, which I'm pretty confident that I did, it's going to do the exact same thing. So that's what a before filter does. It just receives the request and performs some actions even before it hits the route. So let's describe the problem in more concrete terms. So I've already described it. Unauthenticated users can't at this point come along and create a new post, but they can still edit and delete. I'm going to show you. It's going to make a very subtle change. You can tell I'm not authenticated because it's still saying I need to log in. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit a couple of exclamation points, right? So if this was set up properly, this would not be allowed. I press submit though, even though I'm unauthenticated, it's still going to make this change in the database. It's going to follow that put route as defined in actions.rb. So I scroll down and there it is. I got a problem. So I'm going to define a broader route. So when you're defining these filters, you don't actually need to pass a route. You can just do it for everything. And any request that's made, this code is going to get executed first. Now this is a little bit of a trick, a little bit advanced, but there's really only two routes that I need to protect here. Currently, an unauthenticated user can edit. So I say if request.request method, and this is of course referring to one of those HTTP verbs, if it equals put for the update, I want to, well, you know what, for now I'm just going to redirect. We're gonna make one of those error codes in just a second, but for now I'm just going to give the user an opportunity to log in, which is probably the friendlier route to go anyway. So if I'm not logged in when I try to remove these 3 exclamation points, at this point, well, actually, yeah, at this point, it's going to redirect me. It's not going to make that change. Uh-oh. Kind of looked like I made that change. Did I not save? Oh, I just redirected home. Oh, sorry, I meant to redirect to login. Hang on. Let's try that again. Not because it's super important, but because I want to be clear in this illustration. So right now it didn't, so it's working properly. Let's try it again. All right, edit. Still got those 3 exclamation points. I don't know who was messing with my description, but I don't like it one bit. So I'm going to take them out. Uh-oh, I forgot to log in, right? So it works. Same thing with delete. Now, I don't want to do this just because I already said I don't want to go copying and pasting from YouTube again, just because it takes a long time. But at this point, there's nothing to stop me from coming to here and pressing delete. Just take my word for it. If I press the delete button, it's going to disappear. So I can broaden this protection by making a similar parallel condition here. So if the request method is put, then direct me to the login. If the request method is delete, do the same thing. Direct me to the login. Don't actually delete it unless you know who I am. So I'm going to refresh. I guess it's probably not going to make a difference in this case, but I'm going to refresh anyway. This time I'm still not authenticated because I can still see that login. I press delete. And here we go. Make sure you log in. So now part of today's lesson, well, of course, it involves filters. The other big part of it was status codes. So this is the perfect opportunity to use the 401 not authorized status code. So I think in practice this would be a lot friendlier. But for today, we're going to do something different. We're going to give a very hostile message. And we just say halt 401 like that. Let's see what the default 401 screen looks like for Sinatra. Go back. Okay, so I press delete. I should get some nasty message saying that you're not allowed to do that. Well, Didn't get a nasty message. Let's see if it actually did. I was hoping for some sort of default screen. Network, here we are. Let's try that again. So I'll try to delete. So this is all the interaction between the client and the server. I should see a 401 in there, hopefully. There it is. So it doesn't look like much, right? The user has been presented with this blank screen. He has no idea did it actually work. Forgot to log in. We've got to provide some sort of feedback. So this gives us the opportunity to, I don't know, scare away intruders. To do that, you just call the plain old ERB, and I'm going to create a new view called 401. And I'm going to say only do this unless I'm already logged in. That's not something you've seen before. You've never seen this unless condition. This is one of the nice things about Ruby, and I really do love Ruby. It's you can get a lot of work done with very little code. What I've done here is very similar to this. So, and in fact, not only similar, this in effect, it is identical. So this is equivalent to this. Whoops. Unless logged in. That's the exact same thing. Just point of interest and makes it nice, and that makes it easy to read. So at this point, I still don't have an error 401. I think I should probably get some sort of crash here. Let's take a look. Either a crash, oh yeah, it says no such file. It tried to render the ERB 401 view, but it doesn't exist yet. So let's create it. I put that in my views alongside all the other ones. New file, error 401.erb. And of course, you can do this for every single status code that there is if you wanted to. It wouldn't make sense in most cases, but this is one of those times that it does make a lot of sense. So let's just make sure it works. Get lost. Or let's do get out of here, poser. Just thinking of Bob and Doug McKenzie. I don't know why. That just popped in my head. So let's try it again. So now it's going to render that view. There you are. Get out of here, you hoser. All right. Let's dress this up a little bit. Let's give something really frightening. So some naive user might come along, and you don't want that person to come back. So I'm going to give a big message up here. I'm going to say, you are not authorized to access that resource. H2, your IP has been logged and the RCMP have been dispatched. All right, so someone's sitting there. It's probably like my mom or something. Oh no, I didn't do anything. I didn't know. The RCMP are coming. Let's try that again. There we are. So the neat thing about this is actually you can get the IP and you could log it. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's do, we'll go to the actions, and right here, so this works the exact same way, right? So when we're defining these routes, we can use what are called instance variables. And these instance variables are accessible inside the view. So I'm going to assign IP, and I'm going to take it from this request. So this request object accompanies every single request that you make. And there's, of course, a corresponding response object, which is what we modify when we're coming up with something to deliver to the user. So I'm just going to take the IP like that and make a small update over here on my error screen and put it here. We'll say percent IP, just like that. Oh, I missed a closing brace. All right, let's see if this works. I'm usually pretty confident, but some stuff happens. Let's try that again. Oh, what did I do wrong? What am I missing here? Oh, anyone tell me what I'm missing here? Take a good look. Why did it literally type out this instead of the IP address I retrieved from the request? No, there is a request, and there is an IP. We know this because it didn't crash.
Change the app to the IP?
Nope. I suppose it's not obvious. I tried to do string interpolation, right? That only works when you're working with Ruby. So we're kind of working with Ruby, but well, hopefully you'll recall when I do this, we don't use that hash when we're interpolating stuff. We use, right? So there you go. Let's try that again. And there I am. So this is the unique ID assigned to me by the magic. I actually have no idea how this stuff works. This is like kind of ancient technology in terms of network stuff. But we all have a unique one, just like we all have a unique email address. There can only be one IP, and that's whatever's been assigned to me. Well, actually, I guess it would be up in Cloud 9. That's the IP address that's working. So, you frighten this guy. Hopefully he won't come back. Frighten my mom. Hopefully she won't come back. Okay, so we've done a couple things. Added a before filter, and we've done a custom 401 error code. So anytime that there's unauthorized access, you're going to see this thing pop up on the screen. So let's talk a little bit about this responsive design. So we can add a little bit of oomph to this this warning. Maybe put some pictures. Well, let's do that. So first thing I think I want is, let's find some pictures of the RCMP. Just start from scratch. So we're going to find something. We're going to put it as a background, to really enforce this point. Sure, Google, as if you don't already know exactly where I am. There we are. Okay. Oh, here they come. That's a little one, right? So this is a 620 by 349. This would be, really appropriate if it's a cell phone in landscape mode, right? So you tilt it on its side. That would fit quite nicely. So I'm going to, I don't need to download this or anything, but I am going to get the URL. And I'm going to use this as my background. So then I've got to provide the HTML infrastructure. So I got to provide a box to apply this background to. And that all happens, that first step happens in the error HTML or ERB in this case. I'm just going to call it ID error picture pic. Like that. And so this is going to be the text on top of it, and the pictures, hopefully, if we do everything correctly, is going to appear underneath. Let's go open up our styles. Is that my styles there? I got to close some of these things down. Hang on. Do I got two errors? Error picture. Oh, that's my error partial. Okay, that's a little bit more reasonable. Let's take a look at my styles, and let's create some new ones. So I got to make sure I'm looking at my notes. And right down at the bottom, I'm going to define something for that error pic ID. of course, the ID has the hashtag attributed to it. And I'm going to just start with the background image itself. So this is easy stuff. Why it looks this way, I don't know. If you're really curious, learn a little bit more about CSS. But I provided that URL. And if I did everything right, and it's not going to look like what we want, just heads up. But let's take a look and see what it does look like and see how we can improve it. Oh, here's that confirm form resubmission. Let's do it anyway. Here we go. Okay, so we can kind of see the top, and we kind of see like two groups of RCMP officers. So yeah, we can make this better. Let's first of all increase it so that it fills the entire screen. And you can use a new unit of measurement. This might be new. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But we have something called VH, which stands for vertical height. So any value that you apply here is going to be 1% of whatever view is allowed, or sorry, 1% of the current screen height. It should expand to the entire screen, fill the whole thing up. Still not going to work, but let's see what happens. And the reason it's not going to work is not going to be obvious. And if you try to do oh, I guess it did work. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead of myself here. Okay, so still not too bad. We'll get back to that point in just a second. But I don't like this like repeating tile kind of thing. We can, of course, change this with CSS by making this simple, assigning this simple constraint, background repeat. I say no repeat. I don't want it to repeat. So still make it better. Let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so it's not repeating. Still doesn't look that great. We can say background cover, or sorry, background size cover, like that. It's not really a size, but whatever. So this should distort it so much because it is a pretty small video, but so it starts to get grainy. So this is appropriate on a cell phone, maybe less appropriate on a big screen because it just doesn't look that good. The other problem we have is that we got this weird bar up here. I mean, problem aside from that weird spelling mistake, we got to get rid of this because it just looks dumb, right? Let's make it look nice. To do this, we can cheat a little bit. We can do it's all going to be trial and error one way or the other. But if I inspect this error pick, I can examine the current margins. So, well, nothing's set. So what's happening here? It's kind of weird, right? We can cheat a little bit, though. We can adjust these margins. So let's say I want to make it negative 20 pixels. Right? And you can apply these negative values. They're just going to shift off screen if necessary. So if I hit enter, that looks pretty good. It's not bad. We can try a little bit more responsive unit of measurement, maybe the EM. I just learned the other day, actually, that the EM, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's say 2 EM. The M is the 12-point Times New Roman letter M. This is our baseline, right? So if we say 2 EM, make it twice that big. Make it 24 points, or in this case, it's going to translate it into some pixel value. Let's see what happens and see what it looks like. Okay, that seems reasonable. Went up. Just for curiosity's sake, 2 EM in this case translates into 32. That's not going to be the same. EM is one of these responsive units of measurement, just like VH. So let's make that permanent. Change this here. We'll say margin top minus 2 EM. If I'd refreshed before, it would have just disappeared. Now, when I do it, it's now a permanent, well, semi-permanent definition inside of my CSS file. Okay, starting to look pretty good. Not too bad, but we still have this problem that we're using like a really grainy picture when we should have something nice, crisp, and clear. So let's look back at our RCMP photos, search from Google. Let's find a bigger one. So that's pretty small. That was pretty big, 1024. Let's see if we can find a bigger one. Well, here we go. So 1500 by 1000 pixels roughly. This is a nice big image, and when we display it to the screen, it's not going to mess up. So let's open that one up. Grab the image URL, and let's make another definition. So what we have is pretty good for a cell phone. It's not going to be that good for a larger screen. So let's make a media query. So you kind of saw this already. So we're going to say media, we'll say min width. What's a good width? Like cell phone screens are getting to be such high resolution. Like a good safe bet is probably min width, we'll say 700 pixels. I'll say 750 just to err on the side of caution. So if it meets this requirement, if the screen is at least 750 pixels wide, of course there's a corresponding max height and orientation, all these kind of different parameters and different properties you can set. If it's that big at least, I want to redefine this definition up here. I'm going to change a few things around. I don't need to change that much. Really, all I need to do is the background image. So if it's big enough, I don't want to see the grainy image. I want to see this nice big one instead. You know, while I'm here, let's change the color of the text. Make it a little easier to read, maybe white. All right. Okay, now when I said it wasn't going to work last time, I really meant applying it to this case. So let's try it out. I'm expecting it not to work. I'm still going to see these grainy RCMP officers, even if I make my screen wide. Oh, no, it didn't. Darn you. All right. The point I was trying to make is that usually you need to do this. So it's kind of irrelevant, but if you're working at home and you do end up with this problem, usually the browser looks for this, looks for a little bit of metadata in your layout. So when we're talking about layout data, we're talking about all the stuff, or sorry, metadata, we're talking about the stuff in the head. Remember, if we're talking about HTML, the head doesn't get displayed to the screen. Only the stuff in the body. So the metadata is there for the benefit of the browser, or maybe for the benefit of web crawling robots, whatever it might be. We can assign that tag up here. It seems kind of pointless, seems everything kind of works anyway, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out. So we're just saying the viewport, so this is however big your screen is, equals device width. You don't need to copy and paste, or I mean, you can copy and paste this from anywhere, right? So if you run into this problem, just do a Google search and don't concern yourself about the details. This is just something that usually signals to the browser that we want to have this opportunity. We want to make a responsive web page. So really, this shouldn't change anything. Now, if I did that right, if I shrink it down to cell phone size, I should see, oh, there it is. Make it wide, make it short, wide and short. So even though it's still kind of grainy, right? I could probably increase the constraint or decrease the window size. Let's do that. Not that one, this one. Let's make it a little smaller. So the image that we're working with is, was it 600 pixels wide? Was it this one? Yeah, so 620. Let's just like fit it right to the size of the image. Let's not mess around. So if this is at least 620 pixels, or I guess if we really want to be pedantic, 621, we're not going to see it. So this should show us the second image that we added, right? We shrink it down to cell phone size. Oh, there he is. And actually it falls kind of nicely, right? Because you can change the position from where it's oriented. Currently, it's aligned according to the top right. You could align it to the center so that you see more of the RCMP officers. You can do whatever you want. Bottom right, top left, whatever. Make it big, make it small. What else can I show you? I don't know. Any special requests? What do you want to see it do? Or is it so good that it's like a work of art and we shouldn't even touch it? Just leave it. All right. So we've got about 45 minutes till Jen gets here. Let's get down to work, and I'll do up the class summary.